Hello and welcome to Her Next Step, the podcast where women in the public service talk about how their passion and their intuition led them to interesting and exciting career paths. We'll hear about the fears and challenges that could have held them back and about the internal and external supports that enabled them to take their next step. I'm Lily Murphy and I'm speaking to women whose stories will, I believe, inspire you to wonder what stepping stones would help you to take your next step. Catherine Kennedy is the apprenticeship manager at ATU Sligo for the insurance industry. Catherine could have had a career as a chef or a baker, but for the intervention of her grandmother. And she's here today to tell the story of the steps that she has taken that led to her current career. She's also going to offer some advice for students and for leaders and managers in the public sector. Come, Catherine Kennedy. You're very welcome to Her Next Step podcast. Delighted to have this opportunity to have a chat with you about your career. And I suppose for our listeners, it's very interesting for them to hear some of the choices that you've made, some of the unexpected twists that your career may have taken over your time to date. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Catherine, if I were to have met your family when you were young and your peer group in national school, in Achill, I believe, and said one person here will end up as the manager for the insurance apprenticeships in a national university, would they have automatically assumed it would be you?
Definitely not. I would say they would have thought I would be a chef or a baker. That was definitely the route I was going down. I absolutely loved cooking and baking, and it was all I really wanted. Probably up to my Leaving Cert year, that was the plan.
And what happened?
My granny had worked in hotels all her life and seen how young chefs were treated and the long hours they work. And thankfully I listened to her, because whilst I loved cooking and I still do, it is a tough career. It's long hours, it's unsociable hours. And to make it at the very kind of top, it's very limited people do. I changed my mind, and then I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do. Didn't like secondary school at all. Didn't really want to go to college, but I have one older brother, and at the time he said to me, if you don't go to college, you won't get a job. So I applied for business courses, and I had an interest in languages, so that's the route I was going down.
Curiously, did your parents have an educational background? Were they encouraging about the notion of going to college? How did that?
Yeah, they were very encouraging. I suppose my older brother was ahead of me. He went to college. It was always that, you'd go to college to help get a better job. They themselves wouldn't have had any third level education, but it worked hard to support us that we could go to college. Yeah, I'm very, very supportive. I suppose being from Achill and County Mayo, there's not a lot of job opportunities there. It's nearly, once you're born, it's nearly you're going to be going away to college, probably away to work for most people. So, no, they were very supportive of going on and then furthering our education.
And away you went. You had some choices, I gather, as to where you might go.
Yeah, so I got offered, the CEO got offered a 4-year degree in Waterford in business and a 2-year, what was called a national cert at the time, here in Sligo, Sligo RTC. So I'm showing my age a little bit. And as I said, I just didn't like school. It wasn't for me. So I thought I'll never stick 4 years in college. I might stick 2. So I took Sligo. And to be honest, I never looked back. Once I came to college, I just loved it. I suppose I was studying subjects I really liked. It was independent. Nobody was making you do it. So I wanted to do well. I got this kind of drive. Love Sligo. I had a great time here. I still, obviously, I'm back living here now, many a year. But it was a great town. I had many happy memories. I made some great friends. And then I was very lucky to get the opportunity to complete my 3rd year in America. I got a full scholarship to attend a university in America, and it counted as my national diploma in business studies. And that was a fantastic opportunity.
What did you have to do to get a scholarship?
So it was, at the time, it was called the Business Education Initiative of Northern Ireland. There was special funding for all the universities in Northern Ireland and the border RTCs. It was a business initiative. So the idea was the young students go over and promote Ireland and Northern Ireland. So even if you were a science or an engineering student, you could apply. Now, myself and another girl from Sligo, we were doing business here. So we kept with the business modules over there, and we were lucky it got to count as our diploma. For some students, it was a year out. But it was brilliant. We were placed in universities all across America. We were in Louisville, Kentucky. which is somewhat different. When we heard we were going to America, we thought, oh, Chicago, New York. But Louisville was quite a big city, and we got to travel a lot when we were over there. So, and we got to, part of what we were to do was kind of act, as I say, as ambassadors for Ireland and Northern Ireland. So we got to do a lot of talks and stuff. So it was a great experience, yeah.
Huge
Absolutely
experience.
brilliant. Yeah.
And so what was the biggest learning for you during that period in time?
I suppose initially I would have been a little bit homesick because it was the first time being far away from home and you're really on your own. And I think I learned a lot there about networking. I didn't know it was called networking at the time, but because there was 4 Irish in the university, we were students, we didn't have a lot of money, but we wanted to make the most of our year. So we got out there and we got to meet some Irish people. We got to meet, there was a lot of international students, and we were constantly trying to build a network so that we could go and do things. And we got sailing, and we got to go to Cleveland, we got to go to the Niagara Falls, we joined the soccer team so that we could travel. Built my confidence, and it helped. That was my first steps in networking, even though I didn't know it was networking at the time.
And have those networks worked for you in subsequently?
Yeah. I think the skills have. I'm not in contact with a lot of people that I would have been in college, bar the Irish students I was with. The international students that I suppose just so many years ago we've lost contact, but the skills have definitely stayed with me, without a doubt.
Is it still an important thing to do, networking, in your view?
Absolutely, 100%. To any young people listening, or students, or just starting out your career, it really is, because you don't know how one little interaction in a day can help you in years to come, or can help you develop, or what you can learn from that interaction. I would say I'd say to our students on the insurance apprenticeship that it is key. Every day is an opportunity to network and meet people and learn from them. They may be able to help you down the line. You may be able to help them. It's absolutely key, without a doubt.
And you said you didn't really understand that that's what networking was. That's not what you would have called it. So how would you describe networking now? What does it mean to you now?
You see, I think we can get caught up and call it this skill and it's networking, and then some people are almost afraid of it. So I would say just be natural and just be willing and open to meet people and be open, and that is networking, and it doesn't have to be in a formal setting. It's not swapping business cards. I think business cards are gone these days anyway, but it is just being willing to meet people. Oh, what are you doing? Be interested in people. Even if you're in the lift on the way up, having an informal conversation, you just don't know who you're going to meet and what direction they may bring you down the line, or what you can learn from them. So it's really important.
Yeah. Funny, we've heard that from many of the interviewees here, that it's those people that they've, known from some other contact that has then opened an opportunity for them or suggested something to them, that all of a sudden they've considered their own life and career somehow differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
So there you were in America. What happened then?
So I had a great time, came home. I was just hungry then to kind of get out working and make money. And the education, I knew I wasn't finished in the back of my head, but I just wanted to get kind of a bit more independent and making money, and park the education kind of for the time being, and I knew I'd go back to it. So worked in Achill and B&Bs and restaurant for the summer, as you do, made a bit of money, and then there was no jobs, so I went up to Dublin temping and just registered with an agency where at the time you would just move from office to office. I was lucky I got in with an insurance company, Friends Provident, on a 3-month contract, which was because you could be temping week to week, so it was nice to kind of be in the same office. And Dublin wasn't for me, too big. Spent my day commuting to get to work and my day commuting to get home. Didn't know a lot of people there. So very quickly I realised, no, I need to get out of here. And I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Was enjoying the office environment and meeting people. And then just as I suppose luck would have it or not have it, the company I was working for were opening up an office in Galway, a new regional office in Galway, and they were looking for salespeople. And I love talking, as you'll probably get by the end of this podcast, and I love meeting people. So I thought, I might try that. And I was young, and it was on the road, and there was a company car. It was kind of ticking all the boxes. Yeah. So I went for that, and I was lucky to get that. And I was delighted to be back kind of in the West, a bit nearer home. And that brought me to Galway then as a financial advisor. They had rebranded as Friends First. So I moved to Galway then, and I worked with them.
So sorry, you said a marketing role, but then you said it was financial advisor. How did that transition happen?
Yeah, that would be their sales role. Yeah, so it's on the road. It would have been selling life insurance, critical illness, all of that to both corporate and individuals. Yeah, so it was a sales role. Yeah.
And did you enjoy it?
I did. I did, because again, it was meeting people. We got great training, and it is a product that is badly needed. People don't like to think about death or retirement funding, but it is very much something that's needed. And the training we got, you would sit with a client and go through their financial needs. I was lucky enough, or lucky or unlucky, I suppose. There was a family I sold a critical illness policy to, and unfortunately, the husband had an accident and wasn't able to work after that, and the policy paid out, so I got to see the benefit of it. So I did believe in what I did, and because sometimes when you meet someone and you be saying you're selling life insurance, that's the last person you want to see, but if you really do sit down and think about it, you do need this policy. So, and I did get to see the benefit of it. I suppose at the time then I was engaged, and we were hoping to settle down. So it's not really a job for someone who's looking to settle down and be on the road all the time. So at the time I registered with a recruitment agency here in Sligo just to see what there was and kind of put my toe out into the jobs market. And the day after I did the interview with the recruitment consultant, they rang me and asked me would I consider being a recruitment consultant and join the company. They weren't.
You made such a big impression in that first interview.
Maybe. So I said yeah, because it's kind of a sales type role, but at least it was office based, more normal hours, and it was in Sligo. So again, it was ticking all the boxes. So I started working with Marlborough Recruitment then from there, and loved that. It was Now I was lucky. I was working with them in the Celtic Tiger times. So things were good. And I remember we were building a house at the time, and we planned on just moving into the house with it unfurnished. And for each placement we would place with the company, you get a bonus or a commission. And they used to write it on the board in the office, and I'd be sitting there and I go, that's my kitchen table. That's my TV. And as I say, it was Celtic Tiger times, so there was good money to be had. So I was lucky, and I really enjoyed that.
Do you know what really strikes me listening to you is when you were studying, you loved the subjects, and all of a sudden education changed for you from school to actually doing stuff you enjoy. And in your work, what you've really talked about is using your natural abilities, the stuff that you love doing, meeting people, connecting with people, sales. So it was almost like you were finding roles that really fitted with you, your personality, what you love to do. Does that mean it didn't feel like work?
Yeah, probably not. Definitely. If you enjoy work, it doesn't feel like work. And I've kind of fallen into a lot of the things I've done, to be honest. But you're right. Like I found them as in I love dealing with people. So when I got offered the job in the recruitment consultant, it's constantly dealing with people, employers or candidates. So I knew it was for me. So yeah, without a doubt, yeah, you kind of follow your passion, and for me, it's worked out anyway.
Yes, yeah, brilliant. Just actually, before we move off that, I'm interested, is there financial advice that you would give to young people starting out on their careers?
Try and start saving as early as possible. And I know you don't think about it, and also think about your pension. And nobody wants to think about that until you're in your 50s. But if you can start your pension, this is going back from my days when I worked in insurance myself, but obviously now I work with the apprentices who work in the insurance industry. And so I'm a little bit back, and don't put it off, because the earlier you start something like that, the better. And always have a what the hell fund, because you just don't know, a rainy day fund. We can tend to, all of us, not just young people, can tend to live in the moment, but it is important to think about things we don't want to think about maybe, and just save for the rainy day. And you're never too young to start thinking about a pension.
Very useful advice. The permanent pensionable job was a big aspiration for lots of us, certainly in my generation, even before you. And yet it's not really that common anymore. Sure, it isn't, particularly in private industry. Was that what led you into working in the public sector?
100% it was. It was a deliberate move. So at the time, I was still with Marlborough Recruitment. I got married. My husband was working in the construction industry. And recruitment, even at that time, we were coming towards the end of the Celtic Tiger, was just a little bit volatile. So we kind of just sat back and looked at ourselves and thought, we're both in jobs that are a little bit unsecure here. One of us needs to, we had a mortgage at this stage, just be sure. So I deliberately wanted to move into the public sector, because we were hoping to start a family. We had a mortgage, so it was just kind of being sensible. And I was lucky at the time in that there was a lot of jobs on offer. It was the end of kind of the boom. And I could kind of pick. So I kind of looked around Sligo and I went, okay, so you've got social welfare offices, you've got the hospital, you've got the IT, as it was at the time, a third level education institution. And I just loved the thought of working there, because I thought, again, it comes back to the people thing, but even better, dealing with young people. And you get to, in my head before I started there, you get to see these young people start their academic journey and go the way through. And it has to be a positive environment, is what I thought. And I wasn't proven wrong. So I was very lucky to get a job. Now, I started at the very bottom. I came in as clerical officer. I left a really good paying job with bonuses and commission. But it was a gamble, so that we had one of us in a secure job. And I loved it. I started at the bottom, and my intention always was, I'm not staying here. Okay, I've taken a pay cut, but I've always had this, I suppose, drive to do well and do my best. And as it turned out, it worked out very well, because the equipment company I had worked with went into liquidation. And a couple of years later, my husband, the recession hit, and he lost his job in the construction industry. So if I had stayed, I don't even want to think about it, to be honest. So it was nice to have that security of the public sector job. I didn't stay there for the security. I went there for the security, but I definitely haven't stayed there for the security. Now, it is nice to know that every month you're definitely going to get a paycheck, because, in times that hasn't always happened. But I've been very lucky. There's been so many opportunities in the IT and now ATU Sligo that I've been able to move quite a few times. So it's kind of kept me happy, and that kind of inner drive that I want to, do well and do different things.
And sometimes there's a sense that people go into the public service and they become pen pushers, or they become confined somehow in their roles, and that there's no real opportunities for innovation, etc. Do you agree with that kind of thought?
No, that drives me nuts. Yeah. And I'd say like 90% of the staff in any public sector organisation would tell you the same. And it is an awful misperception that's out there. Like, we work damn hard. And there's so many people that really want to do well in their jobs, really want to progress their organisations. So for us, we really want to make the student experience better for our students. We want to provide the best programmes. And so many staff that work really long hours. So that perception of being a pen pusher is yeah.
I have to agree. It's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, was because I see people being undervalued, and for the incredible work that they do at times. So delighted to hear you say the same thing, and that's your actual experience.
Absolutely.
So you were in a clerical role. Was there cultural differences between this role and what you had left behind in Marlborough?
There was, yeah, and and I think anybody that moves from private sector into public sector will agree it takes a while to settle in. A couple of things that still stand to mind is I remember that in our coffee break, you actually go for coffee. And I remember at the time thinking, because we could have had 50 cups of coffee at your desk in Marlborough, but there was no go for coffee. I remember thinking it was a strange kind of arrangement. But again, it goes back to the network, and it's amazing on your way to coffee, on the way back, how many people you meet and you needed to talk to. And it's good just to have that clear break from work and go back. The public sector can take a little bit long to do some things as well. So sometimes you have to understand that red tape, and it's just because I suppose the bureaucracy is there because we're reportable and on so many levels. So that was a bit of a change initially, without a doubt, yeah.
But you saw a pathway, or did you? Or was it just another opportunity landed on your lap? What happened next?
So I suppose I was lucky. I started off as a clerical officer. I worked for a really lovely man who was very much let me. One of the things as well about the public sector, most managers don't, but you have some who will pigeonhole you into a grade, and then that's all you do. So from the get-go, I was very lucky. Started working with someone who wasn't like that, who let me kind of, go off on my own and do as much as I want. I would, and then advice to anybody kind of working and starting out in the public sector is don't get pigeonholed into a grade. Sometimes it can get you're this grade or that grade. Go in there and do your best and work your hardest. And that's what I've always has been my ethos. So I started working as an assistant to the financial controller, and I worked my best to kind of introduce new stuff to his office. And I remember when I was leaving, he says, "You've worked way above your grade, Catherine, But for me, it made my job interesting. I got, I suppose, a lot of satisfaction out of it. So it kept the interest levels there. And I've kind of taken that. I've moved 8 times now in IT Sligo ATU. And I've kind of taken that ethos with me every step of the way. And I don't try, I try not to get hung up on, well, this is my job or my grade. I go in and try and do my best and make a difference. I always try and improve things. And for me, I get a lot out of that. And obviously as well, my manager would get a lot out of that as well.
And I'm just noticing that notion of improving things. You talked earlier about improving the life of the student. Is that what it's all about when you talk about improving things, or was there something else that you were trying to improve?
So for a long time in the IT, I worked in kind of support more with staff. I worked in finance, HR, or directly for the director and the president. So I would have been dealing more on the staff. But it's more that you kind of look at whatever role or service you're providing. So for example, in HR, it would have been our staff would have been my customer effectively. So it's improving the service you're providing to them. Now I'm working directly with students. It's improving the service I provide to our students so that they have the best experience. In the case of an apprenticeship, you're also dealing with employers so that they have the best experience. But also it's kind of improving it for me too, so that I'm happy in my role and every day going into work. Because if you're happy going in every day, it makes such a difference, you know. So it's twofold, if you know what I mean. It's improving the work you're doing, but also things for you so that, you know, if you like to work, for me, I like to work on special projects. So I'd always put my hand up and ask, well, it's, you know, can I do something extra? Because that kept my interest and my motivation going into work every day.
When you say doing something extra, in my head, I think time. Is this trying to do something extra within within your work day, or are you somebody who worked all the hours that God gave?
A little bit of both, I'd say. Guilty. I don't mind if, again, it's back to if I get satisfaction out of it and it's something I'm really interested in, I don't mind doing extra hours, maybe in the evening or at the weekend. But yeah, probably guilty of a little bit of both. But I would try and build in the workday to have a good work-life balance. But it depends on what it is and what's going on, you know.
And I know you were also having a family as all of this was happening. So presumably that balance was important to strike then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like throughout the years, I've taken parental leave. So at one point, I would have took half days on Fridays and Mondays. For about a year and a half, I worked half time, so just mornings. So yeah, it was all about a balance. It depended on what the kids, the ages they're at the time, what they needed. But that's one of the joys of working in the public sector as well. We're very lucky in that there's a lot of very family-friendly policies that, you know, allow you to do that.
And presumably working in the HR department, you really were aware of those and introducing some of those new changes.
Yeah. I would have been aware of all of them. Yeah, I suppose everybody in the ATU would be, because, you know, they're fairly widely communicated and that, you know, they're open to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious then. I understand that you went back and studied further. So talking of doing extra things, you continued your education as well.
Yeah, for one that hated school, I just had the bug and I knew I wanted to go back and finish my degree. So I went back at night through it was IT Sligo at the time, and I did my degree. And I sat my final exam when I was 5 days overdue my first child.
Oh my God.
But I got my degree. Thankfully, she didn't come. I remember because the part-time students did the exams with the full-time students. So there was like 18, 19-year-olds walking into the exam hall, and there was me, heavily pregnant with a cushion, go and sit in my exam. But so I got that done, and I suppose again that was just for me. I didn't feel I had finished my education journey when I left. I was eager to get out earning and kind of get a bit more independent. But so I wanted to go back, and I had got the bug. In the back of my head, for me, the ultimate thing would be to have a master's, and it always sat there. So I parked it because I had a small baby to look after. But then a number of years later, I started my master's, and it was just something that I always wanted to do, because then I felt, well, tick, I'm done. I have the master's and I'm done. Now, I did it through the Open University so that I could take modules as I wanted them. I never took modules over the summer. So it took me 3 years to complete the master's. Some people can do it in a year and a half. But I just kind of did it in line with my family needs. And in a little bit of a sad way, it was kind of my hobby. It was what I did for me. So I suppose we had small kids. We didn't have a great social life at that point. So the kids would go to bed and I'd start studying. And it was just my outlet. And I really enjoyed the subject area. As part of the master's program at the Open University, you do residential weekends. And they were my drive, because you met fantastic people that were really driven from all types of industry. And I loved those. I used to come back and I'd write down notes. So for the days that you were thinking, why am I doing this? You think back to the people you've met, and they're really inspirational, very driven people. So that kind of brought me along to finish the master's. And it's something I've never regretted.
And that was a master's in?
Business, an MBA, yeah.
So it sounds like you really enjoyed the master's. And I'm wondering, what did you bring back to the workplace, to the IT as a result?
I think it gave me a little bit of more confidence in myself to go for maybe more senior roles, and it gave me the drive that I wanted. That's where I was going. So I didn't mind biding my time until something came up. For the master's, the main things you learned about, well, I took from it anywhere, were leadership, change management, process improvements. We did a lot. We did a module on that. It reinforced my work ethic of always trying to do better, or look at things, or how can we do this better, and then my drive that was, I'm going to keep going, and someday I'm going to have a more senior role. That's what has always been kind of on the agenda for me, was to keep working hard and move into a more senior role.
And as you were doing all of this, Catherine, were you managing people as well?
Not when I was doing my master's,
No. More senior for you meant taking on management, people management stuff as well, did it?
Yeah, or to move in kind of like into program management, or some kind of admin management role. Yeah, that was the ambition.
And
that has, it is. I've been lucky. I've moved around a lot, and then in 2018 I was lucky to get my current role, which is the program manager for the insurance apprenticeship program, which I've done for the last 5 years, and I've loved. It's quite a senior role, but quite responsible, because you're looking after the apprentices, employers, our collaborating provider, and we're dealing with the National Apprenticeship Office. It's been a very successful program. It was the first level 8 apprenticeship in Ireland, and we're I'm constantly looking at how I don't sit in my laurels, how we can improve that and do better. And the numbers, thankfully, our numbers are increasing every year. And then this year I applied for a new role has come up for an operation manager in one of our faculties. It's a pilot role. It's a new kind of structure. As we're becoming ATU, we're looking at how we will structure our management structure in our faculties. And I applied for that in May, and I was successful in getting that. So I haven't started yet. That's my next move, which will be the 1st of September.
Wow, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So what have you enjoyed most about that apprenticeship role?
Definitely, and I know I probably keep repeating myself, the people. I deal with such a diverse group of people. The apprentices themselves are fantastic. Our apprentices come from all walks of life. So we would have career changers, back to work mums. We have had students who just don't know what they want to do, after the leaving cert, take a year out, and then they come into the apprenticeship. So hearing their stories and working with them and seeing their journey is fantastic. The insurance industry is quite a small industry in Ireland. The employers are fantastic, the support they give. I love working with employers. They're very dedicated to their apprentices and their journey and bringing them on. So I find that really rewarding. And then we work very closely with the Insurance Institute of Ireland. They were the driver behind this programme. They're very much into developing education for the industry, improving the apprenticeship. So it's just dealing with people, and no day is the same. That's what I love about it, which you would think might be strange, because students start, but there's always something different, a different student, a different employer, a different problem, or we're trying to improve things. We bring in speakers for the apprentices for their face-to-face days and things like that. So no day is the same. It's busy. I love being busy. I never get through my to-do list. That's one thing. So it's very much a case of, well, what do I have to do today and what's important? So I like that. I like the busy element of it.
And you said you've been there now 5 years, and you've always been trying to improve the service or make it better. What would you think was the biggest improvement that you made from the first time you ran the programme right to now?
Yeah, I think it was the communication with employers, and it has really worked really well. So when I started, I kind of looked at, you could have an apprentice working with the employer and he thinks they're doing great, fantastic with customers, is really doing well in the job, but they might be failing everything academically. So the employer had no way to see this. We had no reporting with the employer, and it had come to the end of the year, and we did an apprentice who had failed all their modules and couldn't progress. So you have an employer who's very unhappy because they have a great employee, but there was nothing they could do. And you have an apprentice who, for whatever reasons, and there's lots of reasons, was just struggling academically and has to leave the programme. So that was one of the first things I identified, and I developed a biannual reporting mechanism to the employers so that they know exactly what's happening and so that they can intervene. In one case, for example, it was just an apprentice was the eldest in the house, had a number of younger siblings, and in the evening had nowhere to study. No quiet place. And because I could let the employer know that, this apprentice was failing after semester 1, they had a chat with them and said, what's going on? And loved the job, was doing really well in the job, wanted to do the programme, but just couldn't get the space, the quiet space and the time. So they opened up the office in the evening for him as a quiet space, and they encouraged him to join the local library, which he did, and he has since graduated. It's small things like that that can make a massive difference in someone's life, and the reporting with the employers. Now, in some cases, it might be that just the academic journey isn't for the apprentice, but at least if the employer is aware, they can sit down and have a chat, because you don't want a student that's going to be under so much pressure that they just can't do it. They leave the apprenticeship program, but they stay on with the company. So you have somebody who didn't have a career, plan, has joined the insurance industry, loved the job, doing well with customers, loves that part, but just the academic side isn't. And they stay with the company and they do the insurance exams and they become industry qualified. So it's a win-win. That was definitely one of the key improvements that we are every day seeing benefits from, because it's to have that key contact with the employers. So I would report to them biannually, but I have the relationship with them all that they can just pick up the phone or drop me an email and say, look, what's happening? I'm a bit worried about Catherine. Is there anything I should be worried about? And it's really, at the end of the day, our aim is that there's a good outcome for the apprentice, that they will be able to finish the module, finish the year and graduate.
And are there going to be more apprenticeship programs, not, with other industries, do you think, into the future?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it seems to be the government are really looking at this as a way of kind of an alternative to the traditional CEO route. Like other countries like the UK and Germany, apprenticeships are huge. They are looking at, we have this, the year there's been more and more developed. We've just in ATU Sligo, we've just started a new civil engineering apprenticeship, which is groundbreaking in that industry, and it's bringing more people into the industry. So definitely, yeah, I think we'll be seeing more and more of them. I think as a nation, we need to, and the mammies and daddies out there need to be more open-minded. Unfortunately, you say apprenticeship, people think the traditional craft apprenticeship, plumbing, electrical, all of that. There's so many more. So we have insurance apprenticeship, you have civil, there's an accounting apprenticeship, financial services, IT. There's a huge
lots of options out there for people.
Yeah.
So for the young person who's now starting out on their career, just on their CEO forms and, waiting for their leaving cert results, have you any advice for them, particularly those ones who actually don't really know what they want to do?
I'd say follow your passion if there's something. So I'm kind of contradicting myself there, because I said my passion was cooking and I didn't go down the chefing route. But there was listen to people around you, take advice and try and follow your passion, that if you know there's something that you think you'll be happy in, go that route. But thankfully, if you don't find the correct route nowadays, you can change, and there's so much, opportunities out there. I would say don't discount apprenticeships. Really do think about them seriously, because they are great opportunities. You can work, earn and learn. But it is difficult for young people. There's no doubt about it. But don't be too worried. Look, you'll find your route. You'll find your feet.
Yeah, and as you said, it takes a lot of time for some people. Like some of the apprenticeship people you talked about are mothers returning to work, they're career changers. So it's not at all unusual for people to have second and third careers in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
I'm also wondering, what advice would you give to leaders and managers in the public sector in terms of supporting women to take their next step?
Looking back on the way I was treated in different times, or how I would like to treat people, is try and look at them as an individual, not a post, and see what their interest is in and what your passion is. So if you're managing someone, look at the person as an individual. What's going on so in their lives, how can you support and help them? And look at the longer term, which we don't tend to do a lot in the public sector. We don't have annual reviews really. And we're actually very lucky in that, because I know from my time in the public sector, and you have an annual review, a lot of it is based on your salary, increase in your bonus, which we don't have that. So that's all taken away in the public sector. I had an excellent manager who used to sit down with me on an annual basis and do an annual review. And he thought of things that I didn't even think of. He was the one who encouraged me to do my master's. I remember him saying, would you ever think of leaving the public sector? And I remember thinking, gosh, he wants me to leave. But he was looking at the big picture. And by that, I suppose, then I was driven to do better. And I suppose you just feel real, motivated and you can...
And valued.
Yeah, and valued. So at different times, I would have been knee deep in young kids and nappies and whatnot, and you're not really looking too longer term. But if you're treated as an individual at that time, look, well, what do you need right now? Would parental leave help you? Half day a week or whatever. To treat the person kind of in the situation they're in at the time. But then also go, and look, long term, what are you thinking, Catherine? What about doing a master's? And just even think of it for the long term. So just to keep people motivated and see that they have a career path. I think it's really, really good. I remember one of my managers at the time going in to him, and one of his senior managers had come in and said that it was under him and said she just applied for parental leave and she wanted to take 1 day a week. And he goes, what am I supposed to do? He says, do I say no and I've got her in here unhappy 5 days a week? Or do I say yes and I've got someone happy 4 days a week? He said yes. And the result was that he'd looked at the individual and what she needed. And he had a really happy employee coming in 4 days a week who more often than not would end up doing extra work anyway. So it's just to treat people, like an individual, not a post, to be as supportive as possible. While as women in the workplace, different things may change. You may have commitments either caring for family or children or whatever it might be, that you just look at the individual's case at that time, but then also look at the longer term view that that's not always going to be the case, that you may come back and be able to work your 5 days a week or whatever, or take on a more senior role when you have a little bit more time.
And that annual review thing sticks in so many people's hearts, doesn't it? It strikes fear in them. And yet what you're saying is that it doesn't need to be a fearful exercise. It can actually be something, a conversation similar to what we're having here, where people are asking those questions. Yeah. What's there for you? What do you need?
Exactly that. And if it's done in the right way and in the right culture, if you have it, that, look, this is a conversation about you and how can we make things better for you as an employee and where do you want to go in this organisation? And I think we're lucky in the public sector because it's not tied up. I remember my days from the private sector when it's tied up to your salary increase and your bonus and it becomes a negotiation. All that's gone in the public sector. So it really can be a very positive conversation. But there is, you're right, is that fear that it's a review of your work and how well you're doing. But if you have a manager who can make it a very positive thing, it can be very effective.
So if we look back to the little girl who was in Achill, hated school and thought she was going to be a chef, looking at her from the vantage point of today, do you think she'd be proud of you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. As I say, sometimes I think I still don't know what I want to do, but I've nearly fallen into a lot of them. But I've had a great time. Like, I've loved every job I've worked in. I've worked with some fantastic people. I remember my mum said to me once, she says, I wouldn't worry about you, Catherine, you're a hard worker. And I think that has stuck with me all my life. And I've always worked hard. I've given everything my best. So I feel I can be very proud and stand over everything I've done. I'm very happy, I suppose, where I've progressed within the organisation and what I've done. And ultimately, I feel in my current role and hopefully where I'm moving is that I've made a difference. So I suppose in the beginning, you're working and you're earning, you're paying your mortgage and all of that's really important. For me now, it's very much about kind of quality and making a difference and making an impact. And I've definitely been able to do that in the apprenticeship, my apprenticeship role, and that is the hope for my new role going forward, is to be able to make an impact and a difference.
What sustains you? What keeps you going? Because it takes a lot of energy to do what you do with that level of commitment and passion.
Yeah, I think it's an inner drive, and it goes back to probably what my mum says, you're a hard worker, and it was just, I don't know if it's been brought up in the countryside and you were thrown out to the bog when you were 7. It's an inner drive. I've always been a hard worker. I always wanted to do well. I suppose as I've got older now and I'm a mum, I want to be a good example to my girls, to provide a good example to them about working hard, doing an honest day's work, treating people right, and making a difference so that they can see that, well, that's what mum did. So that's a good example. That might be what I might do, you know.
Fantastic role modelling. You also said you walk and you enjoyed the sea and... Yes. You get a lot of sustenance from there.
We're all busy and it can get on top of you. For me, walking is just, it clears the head. If I've had a bad day or I'm worried about anything or I'm just stressed, go out in a bit of fresh air. And you might want to go out, particularly in Ireland, it could be lashing. But that half an hour out of a walk can completely change the mindset. It can lift the mood. Also, I find I have my best brainstorming sessions with myself when I'm walking. You know, when your mind clears and you've got nothing, you're just walking. I don't tend to listen to anything when I'm walking. And I think it's some of my best ideas when I'm walking. And I'm usually rushing back thinking, don't forget that now, write it down. And then the sea for me, if I can walk by the sea, it's a double bonus. Maybe it's been from an island, but just being by the sea I find it very grounding. That if you're any bit anxious or stressed or anything, if you just sit for a couple of minutes and listen to the waves coming in and out, and it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be a good day or a bad day, it really is great for any kind of anxiety or stress you might be having.
Catherine, so much more than we could probably talk about, but I'm absolutely delighted to have had the opportunity to chat to you here at Her Next Step. I think the message that you bring about following your passion and how fulfilling that can be, and the fact that working in the public sector allows you to make significant change that will benefit others in the long run, it is really heartening. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, lady, for having me. It was a great opportunity. I've never done anything like this before, and I was a bit daunting to do it. But I think your message is really important, what you're doing. You know, for people entering the public sector or possibly women that are currently there for a while, what I'd say is, you know, don't be afraid to take that chance. Sometimes a little bit of self-doubt and our confidence can get hit in the workplace. But don't be afraid to go for the opportunity, work hard, because there is great opportunities out there. And I think this type of podcast will hopefully maybe encourage women to do that. So I think it's fantastic what you're doing.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed today's show, do like and share the podcast. If you'd like to hear more interviews with smart, ambitious, passionate women in the public service, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. We welcome positive feedback and suggestions for future guests you'd like to hear from. Meantime, goodbye from me, Lily Murphy, and all the team at Her Next Step. Remember to look for the stepping stone that will support your next step, or consider how you could be the stepping stone for somebody else.